I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing one of our guest speakers today. And this gentleman is a managing director of their small business marketing organization on a global basis. He's spent the last 20 years of his career in the high-tech industry, in sales and marketing and general management. He's an ex-IBMer, much like myself. He was in the top 1% of all sales when he was at IBM. And his song, to come back to the list of 6 questions that he gets inspired by, is Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. Would you please welcome to the stage from Google, Todd Rowe.
Thank you, appreciate that. A little bit louder, please. Music, all right, thank you. I love that, thank you. Sales is really a jungle in many ways, but I appreciate your letting me come and speak to your sales conference. You know, it's interesting. What a strange new world. Usually at Google, being dressed up is just wearing socks to work. Working with a company that focuses on the legal industry, much more conservative, and have the guy from sales in the Tommy Bahama thing and the Google guy in the suit and jacket. What a strange new world we have. But it is wonderful to be here with you. I have a few things to share with you for the next 20,000 slides, so I hope you guys are busy, or comfortable here. So I get asked to speak at about 20 different sales conferences around the world, and about half the time I'm asked to speak about the future from Google's perspective. And as I talk about this, it's not so much the title that's most important here, it's a subtitle. In essence, we can talk, and I'll talk to you about what the industry trends are, what we're doing at Google in Silicon Valley in terms of new products, but more importantly, it's what the implications are. What do we do as a sales force in selling our services to the law firms and saying, here's what you can take advantage of right now. It's a subtitle that's most important to us, and that's where I'll spend a lot of my time talking about over the next 30 minutes or so. As I show this slide, and I show this purposely, you see this open, wide field here in terms of what's going to happen. The good thing for us in digital marketing and at Google is we are 5 or 6 years along a growth path where we pretty much know the trends and what's happening here. You're going to see some things in terms of that are linear growth, others that are exponential. But this is not something where you're going to have 2 or 3 things that is like, wow, I did not see this coming. In many cases, we're down the path far enough to know, here's what's coming. But again, as I said before, it's more of what are the implications and what do I do about it this year? What do I sell to my customers to take advantage of this so you are well positioned not just in making your numbers for the year, but also in terms of sealing yourself in terms of the leadership position relative to your competition. So in my presentation, I'd like to talk about things from a macro level first in terms of what's happening in the general industry. Then we'll go more specifically for the legal industry and finish up in terms of what are the implications, what do we do specifically this month, this quarter, this year. Okay? So at Google, we have a number of different people looking at the industry to see where the trends are and how are we affecting or driving those trends and those changes here. Let me take you first of all from a macro perspective here and show you some things. This is a slide where it'll look at from all the different media types, both the customer growth in customers or declining customers, as well as the growth or decline in revenue here. And it's interesting, immediately what pops out to you are the things on both sides of this chart. Left-hand side, you'll see as far as online here, growth from 2010 to 2011, as far as customer base growth, 17%. And an even greater growth in terms of revenue, 23% year-over-year growth. Compare that, if you could, to the right-hand side, newspaper and magazine here. Newspapers declining in customer base by 4%, and the corresponding even greater decline in revenue of 7% decline in revenue. That's not over a course of a lot of time, it's just 1 year's decline. Whether it's Gannett with USA Today, Hearst Media, whether it's Washington Post, so on and so forth, you see significant decline in those revenue streams here. What's interesting, from a legal standpoint, you see where is it historically have law firms been advertising? Well, you see a fair amount doing that maybe in newspapers. You might see some in terms of TV, perhaps less so that way. But not only do you see that shift overall from an industry to just overall U.S. consumers, but you see that same thing happening in legal industry itself, which is good news. I've got a couple slides I want to share with you and focus on more detail in terms of what's happening in newspaper and magazine, and then compare and contrast that relative to digital media. The key point here is that you and I in sellinglawyers.com are very well positioned for this big change that we see here in the industry. Historically, if you want to look at what the revenue is for newspaper side here, literally since 1950, keeping it in constant current dollars through 2012, you see a spike here until you hit in the year 2000 here, and then that significant drop. Right? And you saw a couple bumps there going back up here. On the blue line, you'll actually see the print revenue. And then you see this other line here that started here that includes online. But even with online, you see a significant decline here in those revenues, right? Let's compare and contrast that, if we could, to that other side from the digital revenue here. 10 years ago, 2001, this is from through 2011 here. 10 years ago, about $5 billion in revenue, increased 6x to about over $30 billion from 2011. 2012 hasn't been updated for overall industry, but you see that you still see that exponential growth. We haven't yet seen an asymptotic curve effect of leveling off here. It still is continuing, which is pretty significant for us. Right? So, and let me just do one more slide here in terms of, well, as we look at professional services industries, tech, media spend, where is that happening specifically? Because as these industries go, you see other industries like legal that follow that as well. We looked at it this last year and said, what's the split between advertising in a print basis versus a digital basis here? And it's almost a 60-40 split here, 38 to 62% for 2011. What we've seen from our own revenues at Google is it's well beyond 60% for 2012 as well. So with that as a backdrop, the question is, okay, what are the macro level trends that we see at Google, and what are we doing about that? Let me actually take you through these three trends here briefly, if I could. Here's the first one. Everything and everyone is online. You think about that and say, well, gee, Todd, that's sort of a brilliant statement of the obvious. What do you mean by that? Out of curiosity, help me out here. Total world population, how many people in the world? 7 billion, good. In fact, wasn't it last year that they announced, they said, this is, the day where it's the 7th billionth person? Wonder how they actually knew it was, 7 billionth on that specific day. But with that, about 2.5 billion people online every single day. Out of curiosity, how many times do you think you get people go onto Google and do a Google search in a given day? Any idea? Okay. 3 billion hits. That's interesting too, because we actually get, you remember how Google used to publish and say, here's how fast we give you that response, sub-millisecond response time. We would actually get people sometimes complaining and saying, that's too slow. And so we actually changed that to say, well, let us actually finish the search for you and see here, but $2.5 billion, billion users every single day. Second question, size of the US population. How many people do we have in the US? About? What is it, 250, 300 million or so? Okay. Next 3 years, another billion people, or 3 United States equivalents that will be online as well. So you see that continued shift from a macro perspective, more and more online there. That's great. Now, next point here is an interesting one. 51% of the US population is online. I say, well, isn't that a little bit low? Well, this is not 51% that are online at any given time. At some point, it's the weighted average of people who are online every day. Right now, 51% of everybody say, well, gee, that actually seems a bit high. 51% of everybody in the U.S. online right now. Yes, if you consider things not just as desktop and PCs, but with smartphones, many of you right now are online as well, right? So 51%, pretty significant here. And always on. In fact, the thing I wanted to bring up here is as follows. In the past, going online and searching for something, looking for something, was a conscious decision. No longer is that the case. Where online and offline has really blurred, and it's one overall customer experience, or one overall search, if you will, in finding that law firm. So it no longer is just where you go from offline to online. There's no more such thing as offline and online. We see that especially in the 25 to 35-year-old generation, but even more so now. Another question for you. 37% of all small businesses have a website. Law firms specifically. Is that greater or less than that 37% weighted average for all small businesses in the US? Do you think law firms have, on a percentage basis, is it more than 37% of SMBs or less? Okay. We were actually surprised. For small businesses, it's actually less. It was less. We were actually surprised about that. And the question is that good or is that bad? Is there an opportunity or is it a laggard industry? For us, that means there's an opportunity for us. Opportunity in terms of saying, here's what we offer with lawyers.com. Here's what we can provide for you. And I'd say this, in many cases, those that do have that website, it's more of a digital billboard, if you will. But something where it's a rich website where they can get information, a strong landing page, and quickly change that from information to conversion, if you will, and beginning to work with that prospect now as a client. We still have a long ways to go. Again, we see that as an opportunity. A couple other things to share with you that I was asked to talk about. Remember 1950s, 1960s, that was the age of the network TVs. There were 3 networks, right? 1980s, 1990s, that moved from network TV era to the cable TV era. And we said, isn't it amazing? You've got 100, 200 different channels. How can you possibly watch all those? Then you had the online TV era, the YouTube era, if you will, where it's now thousands and thousands of different websites. Well, the implications are twofold. Number one is for law firms, you're seeing more of the move in terms of adding video components, be it YouTube or otherwise. But the second thing is as follows. Because everybody is online and using this, the competition, and the key point from this slide is your law firm's competition is no longer the other law firm down the street. Their competition is market awareness. Just simply being found and being differentiated, if you will. Because everybody is online, there's little switching cost to say, how do I go from one to the other, if you will. So that law firm in Lincoln, Nebraska versus law firm in Lincoln, Ohio, or in Lincoln, Florida can compete just as effectively here. But the smaller law firms, the competition really is no longer another law firm. It is market awareness and being differentiated. And again, that's the opportunity that we see that LexisNexis has in terms of you are the primary way to help them compete against their competition, which is market awareness. Being found is our greatest goal, right? So first thing here is in terms of everybody and everything is being online. The second thing is as you look at search and SEM, in many cases, what people think of is that desktop computer, right? And that desktop-based website and experience here. That has changed. Do you know that now that smartphones, #1 screen. So if you look at this is from up until February 2012, where there was that meeting point between feature phones, the old Blackberries and things like that, then to the smartphones, web-based, doing browsers and searches, things like that. Now, since then, February 2012, that has changed. As of December of last year, 55% of all phones now are smartphones here. Again, the way in which we think of search and the way in which we need to educate our customers changes. It's no longer just about search from a desktop standpoint, but helping them with lawyers.com where you have a mobile element there, not only selling that, but educating those clients in terms of why this is so important. Significant shift there. Right-hand side here, the chart that you see here will look at not only all the different type of computing devices. In the yellow or the tan line, you'll see those things are PCs. We'll look at both. We'll consider desktop and laptop in that category. The lowest part here in terms of the blue here will be tablets here. And even with that, 2012, you look at the mix between PC and tablet altogether relative to smartphones. For every 4 tablets or PCs, you see 6 smartphones, about a 60-40 split here, right? 2013 will continue being even more the case there. So with this, one of the primary ways in which you'll see people now searching for your customers using lawyers.com is this way. No longer the old traditional PC perspective. You and I know this well. You live and breathe SEO and SEM on a day-to-day basis. I would bet that most of your customers don't fully appreciate this yet. So one of the things that if I were in your position would be educating them about this, where their customers are going to try and find them, educating them in terms of here's why lawyers.com is a superior product for them, because it'll take care of things not just from a desktop, but from any type of device, primarily from a smartphone perspective here. Third change is as follows here. Here's the interesting thing. Consumers are being hyper informed. They come to the law firm now knowing very much about what their background is, what services they provide here, right? So 72% of all people actually do an online search before purchasing. It's even a higher percentage for those looking for a new law firm. I'll tell you in a second what that is, but significantly higher here. The other thing is, as they do that search, they do that research, and then try and do some type of purchase there, 11.5% of people who purchase from a retail standpoint start from a desktop or a web-based search here. So 11.5%, that's not a lot, but it's $154 billion in revenue. Imagine if we could add 1 or 2% of that $154 billion to LexisNexis. How much is that? It's a lot of money, right? So the reason why I show you this slide, however, is nothing that we've talked about yet. Here's the reason why I share this with you. When you and I think of things from an SEM standpoint, that customer experience or that sales cycle we usually think of as linear, starting from a prospect, going on lawyers.com, and then finding that law firm, selecting them, and making that, call it a conversion, or beginning to work with them. We believe that customer experience is changing. No longer is it linear, it's circular. Lower right-hand corner from this slide, 32% of people go back and actually provide some type of a product feedback or survey results and actually provide some type of comment. That same thing is true from a legal standpoint. And so as we look at positioning things with lawyers.com, it's no longer just, congratulations, we've helped you find X number of new customers, linear. It's now, here's what your customers are saying about you, reputation management, social media, some things of that nature. It becomes circular. The question is, are you having those discussions with your customers about that circular customer life cycle, or is it still linear? Because of this trend here of 32% of people going online, posting comments, reviews, things like that, social media, reputation management becomes even more important to you. If you can educate your customers, position yourself as that advisor to them, they're going to be more likely to purchase more and more from you. That's the last trend I wanted to take you through here on this. So, of all this, what does history teach us? As you look at things, be it from the Industrial Revolution or the internet or the move towards mobile, is that as habits change, the money follows. As habits change, the money follows, and that has always been the case. Remember Billy the Kid, holding up the banks, getting thrown into jail, speaks to the judge, and the judge says, "Why are you robbing the banks?" And he looks at the judge like he's an idiot and says, "Oh, because that's where the money is," right? The same thing is true for us. This is where going online is where the money is. The question is, okay, great. Let's talk specifically from a legal industry standpoint and say, what are the trends and what do we do about it? Let me take you just a few minutes here and share with you some of the trends that we see at Google, specifically for search engine marketing for the legal industry. Be as follows here. We said that 72% of people actually go online to do a search before purchasing in general here in the US. 20% higher, 20 points higher, excuse me, for the legal industry. Amazing, 92% of people looking for a law firm start with a search engine type of search here. Again, you guys are in a great spot with lawyers.com here, being able to have that. Left-hand corner here, this will actually show you if people use a search engine, when do they do that? Well, most of them will be at the beginning of that search. You also see a smaller amount in the middle and others that will be at the end of that search here. But 92% of people looking for a law firm will use a search engine, right? And for those who actually convert and say, yes, because this, selecting the which law firm, literally it's 1 out of every 4. So as you see here, the search engine here, compared to other things with mobile device, financial websites and things like that, by far and away 27% of all the different ways in which they'll select a law firm is through a search itself. Now, again, this is nothing that is new to you, but as you speak with your customers, this may be new to them. And say, this is why. The question is, are you able to capture all of these customers who are looking for you if your competition, Mr. and Ms. Attorney, is no longer the law firm down the street, but it's market awareness? Do you have a broad enough and a deep enough web presence through lawyers.com to be able to capture that 92% of people who are going online to look for that law firm? Pretty interesting. The important thing is to maintain that presence for researchers all throughout that process. Not just the point, as we talked about, as far as the conversion and coming to the law firm, but that circular, no longer linear, but circular, if you will. So I thought it was an interesting thing I wanted to share with you here. Second thing to chat with you about is as follows. Many in the legal industry, and I would say even some of us here in this room, will think of this in terms of saying, great, I got a website, we got everything that we need here in terms of the desktop search, SEM, SEO, perfect, we're covered, right? Well, in the US, the average number of sources in which people use to find a law firm, 4 different sources, if you will. So we asked them, first of all, 2 things. First of all, we said, if you're going online to look for a search, what do you use, tablet or mobile? It's interesting to see, do you use desktop? It's interesting to see those that use search engine, 55% of them are using that from a mobile standpoint, which was astounding. Let's look at the top 4 here. If we said, the second thing is that they'll use 4 different online sources on average to select that law firm. So the question for us is, do your customers have a presence here in many different sources? Our goal is no longer just to be on 1 or 2 sources, but as broadly proliferated as possible, right? So if we're saying it's an average of 4 different ones, let's look at it here for a second. Top 4 search engines, maps, logo finders, mobile apps, and then consumer-generated online reviews, right? So with those, what's also interesting to me, as I was saying, is how much in terms of just tablets and mobile being used as well. So do your customers have mobile optimized websites? Do they have mobile optimized campaigns as well? And do they have that broad proliferation? It's not just a question of depth of, I got SEM for you, it's a question of breadth as well. And do they have all these different, do they have a presence in all these different areas? Okay, good food for thought for you. And a good way for you to say this is why you should be working with LexisNexis, because we can help you better than any other company in having a presence in all these different areas. Okay. Here's an interesting thing here. We then looked at it to say, what is the power of SEM from a legal standpoint? And what this gives your clients or the law firms in general is reach. 32% more likely to fill out a lead form or something to contact the law firm, be it online or offline, if they use search engine marketing. For those of us who invest in the stock market or real estate or bonds or things like that, what you wouldn't give to have an increase of 32% return on your investment, right? That'd be phenomenal. The same thing is true simply with SEM, simply with lawyers.com. How often can you give that type of assurance from an investment standpoint? Rarely. You can do so online. I would start using some of these slides and some of this content with your clients if you'd like. Last one here, this is the one that blew me away. I was really surprised. We then said is, okay, if you're using search engine marketing of any type, Google, lawyers.com, Bing, Yahoo, how quickly, once you've gone onto that search engine and found that that law firm site, how quick do they convert? Is it one day? Is it a week? Is it a month? What does that sales cycle look like? We did this analysis here. We first looked at a sample size of 300 people here, 300, small businesses. And it was interesting, it was 52% of people, these conversions, and let me define conversion. Conversion is simply where somebody is then either doing an online form or contacting the law firm or deciding, here's a law firm that I want to work with, right? 52% of those conversions happened that first day. Well, quite honestly, we didn't believe the data. And so we went back and we did a sample size of 5,000. Increased that initial sample size by over 15x. Results were the same. Within 1 or 2 percentage points were the same. So to say, literally, if you want, in terms of speed of execution or speed of conversion here, the value not only of SEM in general, but again, tying that to lawyers.com, pretty significant here. So we've talked about a lot of different things in terms of the 3 overall macro trends. Then we talked about some things in terms of the legal industry. Just one last thing I'd like to share with you before I then talk about what the implications are. As we work with our partners, now I run the channel sales organization for Google globally. It's about a $5 billion line of business, and it's one of the 3 fastest growing lines of business for Google on a worldwide basis. Part of the reason why that growth is we're trying to give our partners informational ammunition that others don't have. Let me give you an example of this. This is an example specifically in the US market for subcategories of legal. And as it looks at here on the x-axis here in terms of the query growth, in essence, where are the customers going for what type of legal service? Disability, or estate planning, or business formation, or passports, or things like that. And then the y-axis, what your cost per click is. Now this is for total US, but we work with our partners and we provide them to say at an individual rep level or in a certain geography to say, where are the hot areas? What are the hot spots, if you will? So as you're talking to your customers and saying, where should I allocate my digital marketing spend? This is where it should be. And so we actually can share that with you. So the question is, what are the implications for us? Well, we've talked about the shift from offline to online already happening. Rear view mirror, right? 5 years ago, 10 years ago is where that started. We know that. Consumers are looking for your customers online. Your customer's competition no longer the other law firm, it's market awareness in general. The other thing we've talked about is that search engine marketing is no longer a desktop only opportunity. It needs to be from a smartphone perspective. In fact, you're seeing much more, 500% growth year over year in smartphone advertising, digital advertising compared to desktop, right? So here's what we think from a Google standpoint. We believe that these market trends favor LexisNexis. You've got a market share position that is the envy of anybody else. At Google, in the channel sales side, we're not Switzerland. We make our bets on specific companies. I've come to speak with LexisNexis. I'm not doing that with FindLaw. I'm not doing that with Scorpion. We've bet on you. In fact, I was supposed to be in China this week, but I got the opportunity to come, the invitation to come and speak, and so I really wanted to be able to do that here. So we're betting on you, and we're going to be investing much more as a company in LexisNexis. And again, we're not Switzerland. We're only doing this with one company. So a couple things. What is a given? What is a given for this? We've talked about the first 3 data points here. I'm not going to go to it further. Last point is probably the most important one. We believe at Google there's a 3-year window in which the majority of law firms will have completed and decided here's what they want to do from an SEM platform. Be it lawyers.com, FindLaw, or whomever else, right? We believe that there's that 3-year window opportunity here. Well, that is a given. You see that convergence because you see such significant growth in digital marketing, smartphones, the trends that we talked about here. Game over. You're going to see that tipping point, and you'll see that whoever that company is, that'll be that de facto leader by 2016. 3 years. That's what's a given. What's not a given here? What is not a given is who are the companies that will see the opportunity but just not invest, not execute on it and say, you know what, I saw the opportunity, didn't take it. In contrast to other companies that said, we're going to invest, we see the opportunity, we're going to differentiate ourselves from our competition, and we will win in this market here. That is what is not a given, right? So it is yours to win. You've got the market share lead, you've got the expertise here, you've got the backing of Google here, really it is yours to win. So here's how we're going to help. Few things, 3 things. First of all, specifically, we'll provide you the product training, AdWords, mobile, display, and things like that. If it's of interest, we also provide sales training. In essence, from Google's perspective, who is that typical customer profile of who I should be going after here? What are the primary objections you get, usually, from a legal industry standpoint? How do you overcome those objections? How do you increase your close rate? Things like that. So we can provide you with this type of training if it's of interest, or integrate that with the training that you have. Secondly, it'll be a certain type of tools that I just showed you in terms of the query growth, right? The sub-industries in legal that are the hottest on a geography by geography basis. We can provide that for you. Second thing is we can do joint lead generation with you. Google co-sponsors events, whether it's a road tour, whether it's inviting 250 small law firms that don't yet work with you, right? And say, let's actually invite them, hear about SEM, have them hear from another small law firm from a different part of the country who's not a competitor, and say, here's why you should be working with Google and lawyers.com and LexisNexis. So we can do that type of joint lead generation here. What we really hope to be able to do is help use the Google brand, the Google logo, to help differentiate you from everybody else who's trying to sell to your customers. And if we can do that, that is success. Quite simply, the market opportunity is there. LexisNexis is in a leadership position, and Google is here to help. So let's get started. Thank you very much.